Hey, what's up, YouTube? People do this thing where they watch my videos and then don't hit the like button, but they've been hitting the like button some more. So I'd like you to join the people who are hitting that like button and hit the like button. You can also do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. I want to get to 100 subscribers so that way I can do some like cool stuff and then we can have like a party or whatever. Let's talk about the tweet and the stuff and the news, and thank you for watching. All jokes aside, an entire generation of New Yorkers has been completely priced out of buying homes in their own communities. I think we help people most in need first, homeless, the working poor, but the inability of the middle class to put down roots but the inability of middle class to put down roots in NYC is a real problem. Growing up in Brooklyn in the 1990s, I know families who paid 200K or less for brownstones now worth millions. It's true that it isn't tragic to be priced out of a particular neighborhood, but it's still your home. All right, this is something I want to expand upon, and I've been dying to expand upon it for a good like 2 months now. Maybe about a year ago to around this time, I made a video claiming unemployment and why you're an asshole. You can go check that on the YouTube. It was one of my first pieces. Shit is great. Or if you have me on Facebook for some stupid reason. Hey yo, it is astonishing to me that I live in a country, in a society. Yeah, I said the line. It is astonishing to me that I live in a society that will literally raise the prices on housing and not understand why everyone can't afford it. You want to go the math route with this, right? Let's go the math route. Minimum wage workers generally across the country, generally, because I think it's possible in some places, cannot buy a home off of minimum wage. Now, your first reaction to that is, why would I want a minimum wage worker to be able to buy a home? Well, if the ceiling, if the floor, I should say, for buying a home, the entry into buying a home was simply having a job, then all jobs on the market would be highly sought after. This makes obvious sense. If you have a workforce that can afford to do like things like ownership or investments, literally it enriches everybody. As you know, 40% of Americans don't even have $400 in emergency savings. The idea of gentrification is odd to me. Now, you could call this the basics of human understanding when it comes to housing because I'm not going to tell you anything right now that's out of the way or hard to understand. What I am going to say, though, is what bothers me more often than not is that we make these audacious claims. Now, remember what I just said about minimum wage. We make this audacious, like, point to people that they shouldn't be able to do certain things if they don't have the funds. Okay, I'm stopping here because I had a point I was gonna make, but even that point is just so dumb because it's like, why would I even have to say it? Case in point, certain people who live on minimum wage or certain people who get food stamps, certain people who get government assistance shouldn't have access to certain points of society. That is a thought that is ingrained in quite literally how we even develop the social safety nets themselves. If you want a case of that, or you're trying to figure out, like, well, what are you talking about? Make it the obvious one. You can't buy hot food with food stamps. Okay, see, why? Right? Why? What is the difference in the nutritional value between the food stamps, buying cold sandwiches, and hot sandwiches? Think about it this way. There is a literal a cutoff for what you can and cannot do with government assistance. So that puts a stigma on top of the people who have it for just the, and you've heard it already before. Oh, you're buying your $35 lobsters and your $1,000 iPhones with food stamps. Like how dumb people sound. But look at it from a logistical point. Generally, people who need government assistance do not make enough money to clear what they would be clearing without the government assistance. So they need support. if a general amount of your population needs the support, why would you demonize them when the conditions of the job market are forcing those people to do those things? They're doing the right thing. They have a job. This goes into part two, and now you'll see why I'm going to link it back to housing and everything. I know it feels like I lost the point. Trust me. No, I just need to lay some groundwork first. So, because the stigma around minimum wage people means that they belong in a certain place, it is easier for them to say things like, well, if you're poor, it's your fault. My problem is that the millionaires and billionaires exist as a very small portion of society. That's the 1%. You know this argument. I'm just retreading water for you just to get it there and land it there. Sure, whatever, fine. Right? Let's go back a step. Gentrification. If homes are being priced out more and more and higher, the equity of the people who live in New York City, who have made it their home, who are probably here for, who have raised kids here generations, they can't afford to have a stake in their neighborhood, so they get priced out. When that happens, people who can afford it come in. The and when I say come in, I really need you to get this part, is that the majority of the people who can afford those hundreds of thousands of dollars for a down payment for a brownstone, who can afford the millions, who can afford to live in an apartment that costs $4,000 to rent every month, those people, if they existed in New York already, that means that they were living so below their means. I want to say, is that the right way to say that? Yeah, below their means, that the price hike didn't affect them. If that's a possibility, that people exist already in the middle of the rent's too high and the rent's too low, and a budge of, let's say your rent goes from 1,600 to 2,800, if that massive leap doesn't affect you, then you are part of the problem, because now we got to go back to step one. If you can't have equity in a neighborhood, that means that you are pretty much prolonging having to leave said neighborhood. You are becoming a holdout. And you've heard this before because you know that there are people who have had their homes, their apartments, buildings bought out by other people, and they give you a cash settlement. This is probably like around like 70 grand or something. And you go find a new place to live. If the goal of housing is to be profitable, then you effectively might as well just make it more. You might as well make it so expensive that minimum wage workers or anybody in a certain range of wage can't afford to live next to the job, which causes travel concerns, which causes travel costs. You have to relocate. You have to worry about jobs in certain sectors where you can afford it. If you are a technician, if you're like a hard tech and you can't afford to move and your job set is succinctly linked to that, you have to take another job at another place. And if that job doesn't afford you enough money to have gains, if you can't save money, then you are stuck in a perpetual cycle where you need to save more than you can spend, which means you will cut out eventual years of your life doing something you don't want to do in the hopes that it'll eventually lead to something that you want to do. That's the problem with the American dream, in a sense. That level of funding does not exist in the country. That's what I've been trying to say. And that's why I was like, that's so dumb for me to have to say this. You cannot afford for your entire low income poor class to have a jump upwards without taking at least some of the money off the top of the 1%. So the more we pour into companies like Amazon, the more we pour into big chains and whatever, allows them to expand, allows those CEOs to keep the money rolling. Then they can play the investment game and they can make money off that. They don't even need to be a CEO. I done made $6 million. That $6 million got me $60 million. I'm just swimming in the money. What does this have to do with housing? I think I've made the connection, but let's wrap everything up and like really give it a nice send off. Hey yo, there is a problem if the people who create a community can get priced out of it. Like, that's simple. Because let's say the culture, the language, the idioms, the stores, the restaurant, everything caters to that community. If you can literally buy it out, then how are you having a stable housing market? Remember the financial crash of 2007, 2008? We watched The Big Short here. What were those people doing with those homes? I own 7 homes. Because home ownership becomes a literal trip to the grocery store for some people, as opposed to it being a solution to end homelessness, to end poverty. You could strike down a lot of poverty. Home ownership turns into equitable value. If I'm pressed and I can't afford, I sell the house. I go live back in Manhattan. Sell the house. Like, you see what I mean? So people who are poor generally have to move in order for any type of generational wealth flip, because you can't survive if you can't create equity. And what I'm trying to say is that no, like, you can't have a poor class who lives literally paycheck to paycheck and also expect them to be able to participate in the capitalist economy. Not everybody can be a homeowner. And that's the problem. And oh my God, this makes me talk about systemic racism. It's literally going to lock in. Like, you know that they was giving homes and lands to white people and just not doing it for blacks. So if that is a thing that you are aware of, why on earth would you put the onus of like making more money onto poor people when all of the poor people can't be with the 1%? Because then you talk about inflation, right? So there has to be, this system that we live in has to have poor people who can't jump out. And that's why I don't understand personal responsibility or anything black conservatives say. So about housing, it's a double-edged sword. If you can price people out of it, you effectively can just move a population from one place to another, wait till the other place drops in value, have that place, and then have those people who are part of the exodus of the dropping in value take all their grand money, go to the neighborhood that you moved to, price you out there, and you just keep shifting back and forth. The only way to stop this is to either add equitable options to renting or to just do I know where this is going to come from, or to find a way to rebalance the amount of money that people make on a weekly basis so they can participate in the system. If that means, if you let's say the smallest rent for a studio apartment is $1,000. Every job in that neighborhood has to be able to fund that. Sorry, can't do it any other way. Because if it can't, that means that you're gonna have to be somewhere else where you can afford the wage that they're giving you, and you're gonna end up being stuck in that cycle. So either the job raises the wage or the job can't exist because nobody can work there unless you're living somewhere else. And if you already are there and you have to take that job, you can't afford the rent. Therefore, you're going to need money from somewhere else. Why does that job exist? Who is it for? Now you might say, well, if you're talking about like McDonald's or you're talking about like some other place that doesn't have like career options or whatever, then you should only work there or that job's for a high schooler or somebody who's going to school or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but the world changed. The world changed. Everybody needs money. Are you saying because people are younger, they shouldn't be afforded a living wage? Well, what do you think that's going to train them to do when they get older? Oh, I'm going to look for the first opportunity I get and just take the job. Sticking them back in the cycle of poverty. You have to have enough money to not only participate, but survive. The people who I was surrounded with growing up mostly dealt with surviving, which will develop certain types of habits in you where you won't even want to try to do something to excel or push your thing forward. Because if that fails, oh shit, I just sunk a bunch of money into that and now I can't make rent. So you can lock out an entire population of people by literally just raising housing costs. housing costs, sorry. Ain't that crazy? Ain't that wild? And that's a part of what's baked in our system in America. And for some reason, people don't fucking get that. Growing up in Brooklyn, like the first tweet in the '70s, my first job paid $10,000 a year. My first house cost $10,000. I was paid the price of a house a year. I retired earning $60K, living in a house that cost $360K. My first kid's job paid $20,000. His house cost $200,000. So he's paid 1/10 the price of that house. That's a 90% pay cut to his generation. So things were better back then, and then the corporate greed literally took a hold on it and was like, LOL, wait a minute. You were supposed to be poor. Not everybody can get this. Raise the wages or else this is going to, like, the inability of the middle class to put down roots in NYC is a real problem. And look at how much you can talk about simply by just talking about pricing people out of even being able to invest in the housing in their own communities where they've raised children and they were raised themselves. That shit is crazy to me.